A camera crew visited an Alabama prison in 2019 to film an event. There was live music, barbecued food, and prayer. By all accounts, it seemed like a good day. But one inmate shared a message to the filmmakers. There was a reason they were invited with their cameras that day, and everything was not as it seemed at the correctional facility. In his words, the prison was not fit for human society. Soon after, other men spoke to the crew off camera, sharing the horrors they witnessed inside the prison's walls away from the public eye. Thus began a multi-year investigation into Alabama's prison system, filled with footage shot on contraband cell phones by inmates themselves to show what was happening on the inside. Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman, directors and producers of The Alabama Solution, joined Forbes True Crime to discuss their documentary that shines a light on what is happening behind bars in Alabama. Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, the host of Forbes True Crime. Joining me now is Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman, co-directors and producers of The Alabama Solution. Charlotte and Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
I want to talk all about The Alabama Solution, but I think it's important to start right at the beginning. The documentary opens, it's 2019, it's a gorgeous sunny day in Alabama, and although it does start in a prison there, the vibes do seem to be high. There's live music, there's a barbecue, the inmates are all outside. But that mood really quickly sours. An inmate comes up to you and says, hey, what's happening here really isn't fit for human society. And it's really no coincidence that they let you have cameras in here this day. And that really seems to open the floodgates, right? You have more inmates coming up, talking to your crew, saying, hey, what's happening in here really is horrific, sharing their horror stories until you're eventually told to cut your cameras. So to start off the conversation, what was the story you were going into telling, and how did that change once those conversations happened? Bring it to that day.
Well, we never really make a plan on the way in to see what story we're telling. We try to go into situations openly and see what we're going to see. We went there to film a revival meeting, but we knew that there were big problems in that system. We just really didn't have any kind of transparency because these systems are so secretive. And when we went in to film that meeting and we were in the yard, we recognized that there were areas of the prison that they were not going to allow us to see, that they were very strongly asking us not to speak to any of the men. So it was clear that it was when they have people in, and they never have film crews in, but when they have visitors in even, that they're always shown to a particular dorm, that sometimes they call it the faith dorm or the honor dorm. But in fact, most of the prison is not accessible to journalists or anyone else. So that was clear to us when we went in and men started sort of whispering to us. And then when we got a little bit too interested or intrigued, then they decided to end the filming.
And Charlotte, from your perspective, one of the inmates said, journalists are allowed to go into war zones, but they're not even allowed to come in here. So you're a director, you're a producer here. How did you view your role?
Well, that was, I think, one of the great lessons of working on this film was realizing to what extent the public and the media is kept in the dark about what's happening in facilities across the country, not just in Alabama. The secrecy that exists in Alabama regarding the prisons exists for every prison in America because of certain precedent that has been set in the Supreme Court and certain cultures of acceptance that have taken over our country. And I think as journalists and as storytellers, our job is to try to bear witness to the truth, to try to uncover the truth, despite what sort of obstacles there may be. But that was obviously very difficult when you're telling a story about institutional decline in a secret institution. Luckily for us, there were incredibly brave whistleblowers and men on the inside who also see the value of transparency and knowledge for the public and have been working to get this story out from the moment that cell phones were allowed inside the facilities. Cell phones first entered Alabama's prisons around 2013. And there are certain men like the ones featured in our film, Robert Earl Counsel, Melvin Ray, who have been using these devices to speak to the outside world. And I think, what's happening in Alabama's prisons is happening everywhere in America. The difference is we were able to see inside because of the bravery of them and also the bravery of Sandy Ray and others to share their story with us.